very much. I beg you to spare the life of the unborn child who is specially adopted, who is in danger of abortion. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son. Amen.
No.
Thank you, Christy. I think we will start. Otherwise, it's been 5 minutes. So thank you all for coming together, and thank you all for joining. Today we have Anne Christie, or as we lovingly call Christy, with us. So she's all the way from Texas. And most of you know Christy. I don't think she doesn't need any introduction, but anyway, I'll quickly introduce her. So she's originally from Birmingham, isn't it, Christy?
Yes, sir. I
Yeah,
am.
originally from Birmingham. Then and she was our loving darling with Jesus Youth UK, and then she abandoned us and went off with Alvin. So she got married to Alvin, and they live in Texas. So Christy was part of the youth team, and she was here in Jesus Youth UK, and then also she was part of the International Council. Got married last year. I can't remember which month, Christy.
August, sir.
August last year. Wow, it's nearly going to be a year.
Six months tomorrow.
Wow. Okay. I won't ask you any questions about how your wedding is going. But thank you for coming. Thank you for for the webinar and this one. So before we proceed, I'll put some instructions in the chat window. So it's going to be a webinar for about say the whole end to end is an hour. And towards the end, you can ask questions, or you can chat, put questions in the chat as we go, so that you don't forget it. If you want to ask personally questions to Christy, even that option is there. So instead of sending it to everyone, you can personally send it to her, or you can send it to me, and then I can put it together to Christy. So before we start, can I invite Wilma to say a short prayer, and then we will hand over to Christy for the webinar. Wilma, do you want to say a small prayer before we start, please?
All right. Thank you for this opportunity. It's 12 o'clock past here in the night. Yeah, thank you so much. Let's pray. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Amen. As the Bible promises us this verse, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I dedicated you. A prophet to the nations, I appointed you. It's a great promise that God has made to each one of us tonight as we're going to listen to Anne Christie about the dignity of life. Father, we lift up this session into your hands. We ask you to pour out your blessings upon each one of us as we open our ears and empty our hearts to receive your message through Anne. Bless her and cleanse her heart, cleanse her mind, her thoughts, so that she hears you as she speaks out to us. As we go on with the session, open our hearts to the new insights, which calls us to be the messenger of your voice to this world where we live in. Abba Father, fill our hearts with your great love as we listen to your words. Father, Jesus, be with us as we listen to Anne. O Spirit of God, work in us as we listen to Anne and as we discuss. May this hour be precious in each one of our lives and be counted on to spread the same to the others around us. Mother Mary, cover each one of us with a blue mantle and intercede for each one of us as we enter in the time of this webinar. Let's pray together. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed are you amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you, Wilma. So just a couple more things, housekeeping. The whole webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted on the JY website and also posted on YouTube. So in case you want to catch up or send it off to someone, it will be available. And also second thing is all of you will be muted, other than, of course, Christy. And towards the end, if you want to ask questions or in between, please feel free to unmute yourself. So thank you, everyone. Christy, over to you.
Okay, so the topic, as all of us know now, is the dignity of life. So Also, just to say that I'll be using like two screens, so I'll be like looking here, which is where like my notes are. So the dignity of life. When I was preparing for this, when I was thinking about this, one thing that really struck me was, so I was just thinking, everybody knows about the dignity of life, particularly in Jesus. And I was thinking, what can I say to JY families and to JY youth that they don't already know? And then I was just sharing this with one of the youth in JY UK, and this person said to me, he said, the things that are worth saying have already been said, but it's our job to remind people of these things that we already know. Then I was thinking, okay, it's fine. Like, even if it is a repetition, it's something that I think we all need to be reminded of. And while I was doing the preparation, I was reminded of a lot of things again. Okay, so I'm hoping that by the end of this webinar, we will leave feeling challenged to do something. Okay, so just to go straight into the teaching from the CCC, so the Catechism of the Catholic Church teaches us this. It says, I'll just read it and then I'll go through it in more detail. So, human life is sacred because from its beginning, it involves the creative action of God, and it remains forever in a special relationship with the Creator, who is its sole end. God alone is the Lord of life from its beginning until its end. No one can, under any circumstance, claim for himself the right to destroy an innocent human being. So, the word sacred, right? So, human life is sacred. The Latin term for that, the root word for that is sacrare, and that means consecrated, set apart, and dedicated. And our life is sacred because God created it. So, it involves God's creation. So, our life from its beginning, it begins with God. He creates us in His image and likeness. And in our journey of life, we journey with God, and it remains, so the CCC says it remains forever in a special relationship with the Creator, and our lives end in Him. So our whole life, our whole being is in Him. And Saint Catherine of Siena has this really beautiful quote, which I think sums this whole thing up. She says, "The soul is in God." Okay, our soul is in God, and God is in the soul. So that relationship is so strong. Okay, you can't take that apart. God is in the soul and the soul is in God. Then St. Catherine of Siena, she says, God is closer to us than water is to a fish. So that's the closeness that God has to our soul. And He created us out of that love that He has for us. And so once we understand how God is, how close God is to us, and that He's the author of life, then everything else to do with life, falls into place. We understand the sacredness of life, then we'll view every topic in the Catholic Church that's to do with faith in a different way. So, if we take God out of the picture, then we can talk about different things. We can say, we can debate about the value of life. But when God is in the picture, we know it's sacred because God created it. So I just want to go through a few things actually. So I'll be talking about 3 world events, and I just want to just kind of bring your attention to this, and I'll explain why once I finish talking about this. So first I want to talk to you about the Rwandan genocide, okay? So the Rwandan genocide happened in 1994, and it was, there's 2 groups in Rwanda. There's the Hutus and the Tutsis. So the Hutus, what they did was they came to power. There was a lot of issues between these 2 groups, and the Hutus, they organized a mass slaughter of the Tutsis. And over 100 days, between 500,000 people and 1 million people died. We don't know the real estimate, the real number, sorry. It's just an estimate, 500,000 or 1 million, but it could be more than 1 million. And the thing is, during that time, the international community, nobody reacted. Everybody just took a step back. For 100 days, this happened in that country. So many people died. So many women were raped. So many atrocious things happened that the country is still trying to, deal with what happened. So they have, 2 days each year set apart to think about this, to remember what happened in Rwanda at that time. And the reason I mention this is because one of the things that happened, which we will talk about in the other 2 world events as well, one of the things that happened is the fact that the media, so at the time there was no social media, but the media at the time, so the radio stations and the newspapers contributed to the violence. Okay, in that they prompted people, they incited the violence. They told people things like, so the radio stations said things like, "Oh, the graves are not yet full. Go out and kill." Right? And in one of the newspapers, it compared the Tutsis to cockroaches. Okay, and it basically made them less human. It dehumanized them. And so killing a cockroach is not a big deal. So when you dehumanize someone like that, that's what happens. People feel that it's okay. Their life has no value. So this is example one. I just wanted to mention that. Second one is the Holocaust. The Holocaust, I'm sure, does not need any kind of introduction, but just to say that just to remind us that 6 million people died. 6 million Jews died. Nearly a third of the population of European Jews at that time died, killed actually in the Holocaust. And the Nazis at the time, particularly one of their leaders, his name is just Rosenberg. Sorry. So he kind of had this idea. He came with this idea that the Jewish people were parasites. They're the enemy of the German people, and that they are to be blamed for everything that's going wrong in Germany. So they were called the parasites. Again, dehumanizing them, making them, giving them less value than they are, comparing them not to their humanity, but to an insect, a parasite, something that lives off something else. And then the slavery situation in the US, which I'm sure all of us know about as well. But the slaves, they were not even known as a full human being. They were said to be like half a person. So they didn't have the right of a full person. They were just half a person. So in all these instances, what we see is that a group of people decides that another group of people, they're not worthy of their humanness. Okay, their humanity is taken away from them, and they're treated as less than what they are. They're treated as second-class citizens. They're treated or called parasites, cockroaches. Their humanity is taken away from them. The last thing I want to talk about is not a real-life event as such, but it's an experiment that happened in Stanford University in the US. And in this experiment, I find this experiment really fascinating. So this psychologist called Philip Zimbardo took a group of university students, and he had a mock prison set up, and he had some random students chosen as guards and the other students as prisoners. And he wanted to see how, in a situation like this, like a mock prison setup, how they would, how their relationship would be, that power relationship in that situation. And he also wanted to see if there would be an element of kind of dehumanization. Okay, I'll explain what this term dehumanization is in a bit. But so what he found was this experiment didn't last as long as it was supposed to, because it got so scarily horrible that they had to put an end to it. The guards, as you can see, if you're following the slides, they wore these kind of sunglasses where you can see their eyes. So they're kind of just, if you can't see someone's eyes, you can't connect with them in the same way. So they wore these glasses, and they dressed like guards, and they had these sticks and everything, and the prisoners had the uniform. And over the 3 days that this experiment happened, the guards really took on their role, and they started treating the prisoners really badly. And so you can see in these pictures, what they were doing. And some people who were the prisoners left this experiment because they just couldn't. It was just so traumatizing for them. So in all the situations, we can see that there is a dehumanizing of the person, stripping away their humanity. In 1815, it was slavery. 1945, it was the Holocaust. And in 2018, 2020, it is the baby in the womb that's dehumanized. We know that the baby is called a clump of cells. It takes away the humanity. When we talk about a clump of cells, we don't attribute humanity to it, but that's what the pro-abortion groups call the baby, clump of cells. And Shada, I'm getting a few chats in here. I'm not sure if I should be checking this.
Yeah, I'm checking the chats, Christy.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think Mary cannot see the slide she was saying. Can you try sliding in your phone screen?
Okay, so we know, and I mentioned this at the beginning too. When we take God out of the picture, okay, people can do whatever. But so our humanity comes from God. Our worth comes from God. And in Psalm 139, verse 13 to 14, it says this: "For you created my inmost being; you knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well." So God created us fearfully and wonderfully. And like we saw, in the CCC at the beginning, the life that God created is sacred, and no one has the right to take the life of an innocent human being. Okay, so my slides are not moving for some reason. Okay, so if I ask most of the general population, is murder wrong, I'm sure a lot of the people would reply and say, yes, of course, murder is wrong. And everybody knows it's wrong. When it's called murder, okay? So people who support abortion don't call abortion murder. They call it a woman's right to choose, okay? And so when we say it like that, okay, it's not murder. But if we called it what it is, that's what it is. It is murder. It is the killing of an innocent human being, okay? And a lot of people use different situations to say, okay, what if this happened? What if that happened? But at the end of the day, the child in the womb is innocent. Like the child, literally, that is it. The child in the womb is innocent, and it's an innocent life, and we have no right to take that life away. We know that God gives life, and it's up to Him. Only He can take that life away. We cannot do that. And what happens is, so sometimes what people do is they use the law to justify. So they say, it's legal, therefore it's okay. So what happens is, when something's made law, people automatically think, okay, no, that must be right. But that's not always the case, as we can see here. Just because something's the law doesn't make it right. Just because 100 people are doing something, that does not mean that's the right thing to do. But even if only one person does the right thing, that is still the right thing to do. So abortion, we need to call it what it is. It's the taking it's taking the life of an innocent human being. So what happens in abortion is that there's a dehumanization of the victim. The baby is called a clump of cells, and de-individuation of the perpetrator. What that means is, we kind of say we don't have any responsibility because the law allows it, therefore it should be okay. And that's what's happening. So nobody's willing to take responsibility for what they're doing. I, for some reason, have some mark on the screen now, which I don't know why. Okay, so I've always thought this too. For those that can't see the slides, I'll just read this out. If a baby was outside the womb, okay, and you stuck a knife through its chest, you'd be charged with first-degree murder. But you kill it inside the womb, and we call it a human right. That's precisely right. I've always thought, if we could see the baby growing, if the womb wasn't inside and it was outside, and we could see it growing, people would realize what they're doing is wrong. But because we don't, it's out of sight, out of mind. And no human being was created to be degraded, dehumanized, or killed, because we are all made in the image and likeness of God. Just about the unborn child, a baby's heart starts beating at 18 days. And if we just think about it scientifically, when an egg is fertilized, from that point onwards, that is a new life. So it's no longer just the father's DNA, the mother's DNA. That is the whole, that cell there, the fertilized egg, has its own. It is. I don't get it. How can you call something a clump of cells just because it's at that growing stage? Later on, it doesn't grow into a tree. It's still a human being. So people deny the humanity because that makes it easier for them to deal with it. They don't have to face the truth. And yeah, we've all heard about this Planned Parenthood selling body parts of babies, and it was just a horrible thing. And this person here is saying that if they were selling puppy body parts, they would have been closed down, because it seems that other things in the world have more value and more worth than we give to our own children. And abortion is the only medical procedure that aims for 100% death rate of the patient. So I had a video which I don't think it is lagging when we tried it earlier, so I'm not going to show it. But they're thinking about bringing some places it's already happened, but allowing abortion up to birth. So until the moment that child is born, to abort it. And this lady, this legislator is arguing for it, basically. That was the video. No, we can't see. But yeah, even the smallest person can change the course of the future. And abortion not only hurts the child, who loses its life, but also the women that have to go through this, because it says 60% of women surveyed after abortion responded that a part of them had died. And it's not even just the mothers, but also sometimes the fathers who might want to keep their children, keep the baby, but they can't force the mother, and she decides that she doesn't want to keep the baby. And I feel that I just put this in there because I feel like today's kind of really radical feminism misses the point that true feminism is sticking up for women's rights, and that includes the right of a woman to become a mother and to have a baby, and to support the rights of unborn women as well. Those girl babies, because people are kind of missing the point now if they say that these babies don't deserve that right to live. Okay. So I'm just kind of speeding through this a little bit because I also want to cover a few of the topics. We always think about pro-life, and we just think about examples of two people that we all know. Both of their mothers wanted to abort them. One is Steve Jobs, and he says, "I'm glad I didn't end up as an abortion." And Steve Jobs' mom rejected abortion and instead put him up for adoption. And he, said that he wanted to meet his birth mom, when he was older, just to thank her and to see if she was okay. Because, if she had chosen abortion, we wouldn't have had the life of Steve Jobs. The second person is Cristiano Ronaldo. So Cristiano Ronaldo is the most followed person on Instagram. He has 200 million followers. And his mom also didn't want her baby, and she was, she writes in a book that she wrote recently. She said she tried to, like run until she nearly collapsed, and also she drank like something to try and make sure the baby got aborted. But obviously he lived, and it's crazy. There's so many. And when I was in university and I started learning more about pro-life, this is one of the things that I always thought, there are so many other people that should have been here in this class with me that are not here today because they never had the chance to live. So many people that are not here with us. And just a few statistics. The number of abortions, that's increasing every year, while the number of live births are decreasing. So if we just take the year 2018, because we have the data for that year, it says that there were 200,000 abortions in 2018 and 657,076 live births. So that means 857,000 something children were conceived in that year, but 23% of those children who were conceived were killed. And between 8.6 million babies, between 1960 and 2018, 8.6 million babies have been aborted. And since abortion was made legal in the UK, that is the size of a country, nearly 9 million lives taken. But just to touch upon a few other areas, like I mentioned, I feel like when we talk about the dignity of life, abortion is the main topic. It's the one thing that everybody wants to debate about and everybody wants to talk about abortion. But I feel like there are many other areas where we can do something, where we can stand up for the dignity of the life of these people that I'll be talking about. And the first group of people that I want to talk about is the elderly. Okay, so the elderly, it's going to have a lot of numbers and statistics, but I feel like it's important for us to know the numbers, because then it really puts the burden on our hearts to do something about it. Like, and are experiencing loneliness, that number will increase to 2 million by 2025 and 2026. So right now, in 2016-17 data, that's 1.4 million people who feel lonely, like 1.4 million people. And that's increased, from 10 years before that. And 10 years before that, that was 50% less. So each decade, that number is just increasing. And right now, in the UK, I've taken all of this from like actual data that's been collected. So these are not made up numbers. So this number was really like shocking and saddening to me. There are 1.2 million chronically lonely older people in the UK. 500,000 older people go at least 5 or 6 days a week without seeing or speaking to anyone at all. And over half of all people aged 75 live alone. Okay, that's so sad. Over half the people who are over 75, when that time of life when they need the most help, they live alone. And 2/5 of all older people, around 3.9 million people, say that the TV is their main company. And there are 2.2 million people who live alone in Great Britain. That number's increased each year. And loneliness in the general population. So the elderly is something that I always thought about as well. These older people who, sometimes they see you in the shop and they're just so happy to see you. And I realized that's because they are genuinely so lonely. They have no one to speak to. Or if sometimes you see them at the bus stop and they're always striking up conversation with you, it's because they probably haven't spoken to someone in days. And in the general population, and in families and within in the group of disabled people, these are the statistics, that there are over 9 million people in the UK across all adult ages who are always or often lonely. And that's also in the category of young people too, 17 to 25-year-olds. 43% of the people that used the service provided by a charity called Action for Children, that many people were lonely in that category. And then they felt unloved as well. So as Jesus youth, it kind of gives us that burden in our hearts to reach out to those young people out there who feel unloved, because we ourselves have experienced the love of God. And the same charity also talks about how it's the young people that feel lonely, but also their parents too. And another charity research by this group called Sense has shown that 50% of disabled people will be lonely on any given day. And we know that we live in isolated communities and homes in the UK, and people, we might not even speak to our next door neighbor like every day. We might not even see them, for weeks and months, and nobody will know what's going on in each other's lives because we're so like isolated in our little islands. But so many people are lonely, and so many people are yearning for just somebody to talk to. And homelessness is another topic that I want to talk about. So for those of you that can see the slides, we can see that on the map here, in England, like how homelessness is kind of spread around. It's the highest, I think, in London, as we can see, according to the colors. The dark red is where there's the highest number of homeless people. And it was shocking for me coming across this data, because it says 1 in 67 people in Birmingham are homeless. Now, I didn't know that. I've lived in Birmingham for such a long time. I didn't know that. So homelessness. We'll talk more about this, and I want more kind of discussion later on, but I'm just going to cover the topics first before we discuss more on this. So refugees and asylum seekers. So I took this from CAFOD's website. So CAFOD is the Catholic Agency for Overseas Development. And they say that every single minute, 20 people are newly displaced by war, persecution, poverty, or natural disasters. And this is more than any other time really in history of the world. People are being displaced internally within their country, but also outside of their country. And over half of the refugees are children, and thousands are traveling alone without family to protect them. So, okay. The next one I want to talk about is modern day slavery, which is something that I restarted learning about recently. So when we are driving across the country and we stop at motorway service stations, on the back of like toilet doors or in like toilets, they'll have like, I don't know if you've seen this, but they'll have these posters which kind of highlight modern day slavery. So they'll, one of the pictures that I remember really clearly is like in like a nail salon, there's like a girl who looks really scared and her manager who looks really scary. And, the kind of caption given underneath there is like, we might not even realize, but, keep an eye out to see if there are people who might look a bit timid, kind of intimidated as well. And to see how we can help them. Maybe they're trafficked and we don't even know that, but just to keep an eye out for people like that. And so yeah, in 2016, so this is when this data is from, for over 40 million people were estimated to be victims of modern day slavery, and 1 in 4 of those were children. And that's a scary number. So that's 10 million children who are trafficked. And it's a massive business, and it happens around big events, and also like people are called to like children and young people are kind of used by drug dealers to sell things for them, and they don't get paid, and they don't get given anything. So it's slavery. Slavery happens in like different contexts. Sometimes when we think of slavery, we just think of someone in a house and they've been made to do the work in the house. If that also happens today, that's also modern day slavery. But then it has other forms, like a lot of trafficking victims, and there's just different forms of modern day slavery. And in the UK, so in 2016 to 17, the police recorded 2,255 crimes relating to modern day slavery. And that's just the crimes that are reported. That means there are so many other thousands of people, in the UK that are living in these horrible conditions, and, they can't go to the police to report, maybe because they're really scared. So I was surprised to learn that, even in the UK, there are UK citizens too, people born and brought up in the country, who are victims of human trafficking and modern day slavery. So my main point, which I kind of wanted to come to, was this. So this is something that's really been convicting me personally, something that I feel that I have to do something about. So these two words here, orthodoxy and orthopraxy, right? So orthodoxy is the correct teaching, and that's what it means, orthodoxy, correct teaching, correct belief. Orthopraxy is the correct practice, okay, of that belief. So sometimes, I feel that I'm so like, you might, agree with me on this, you might feel the same way. Sometimes we're so caught on, the laws and the rules, and what does the church teach about this, and what's the church saying about that we forget to truly practice our faith in the simplest way that the Lord had asked us to do. And in Matthew 25 verses 34 to 40, it's the judgment of nations, and it's the Lord divides people into like sheep and goats, and then he's saying to people on his right, okay, come you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry and you gave me food, I was thirsty and you gave me a drink, a stranger and you welcomed me, naked and you clothed me, ill and you cared for me, in prison and you visited me. Then the righteous will answer him and say, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? When did we see you ill or in prison and visit you? And the king will say to them in reply, Amen, I say to you, whatever you did for one of these least brothers of mine, you did for me. And that's really been convicting me. Like I was just used to think, oh, I'm so busy doing things, for the Lord, running around doing this and that. But then sometimes, like, when I've looked into my own life, I've not done as much as I should have for those people that are less fortunate than me. Yes, gospel poverty is one thing, and there's no denying that we have to spread the gospel. We have to bring people to Christ, by telling them about Jesus, spreading the good news. But also, the material poverty, like, that's something that we have to help with as well. What can we do regarding that? And in the letter of St. James, and I love St. James' letters because he's very direct and to the point. He is very kind of like, are you doing this, or why are you not doing it? So he says this. He says, "What good is it, my brothers, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can that faith save him? If a brother or sister has nothing to wear and has no food for the day, and one of you says to them, 'Go in peace, keep warm, and eat well,' but you do not give them the necessities of the body, what good is it?" No? So also, faith of itself, if it does not have works, is dead. And that is just to the point. If someone's hungry, if someone has nothing to wear, if someone doesn't have somewhere to sleep, and we just say to them, okay, go in peace, keep warm, and eat well, but we're not giving them, the things that they need to do that, what are we doing? That's what he's saying. Faith without works is dead. And that really, honestly, like, shook me. I'm like, am I doing, enough for the people that need my help? And again, in Titus, it says this, I want you to insist on these points, that those who have believed in God be careful to devote themselves to good works. These are excellent and beneficial to others. So we have to use our time, use our resources to help people who need it. And we have to devote ourselves to these good works as well. So what can we do? So at this point, I kind of just wanted to bring in two people. I hope they're on the call. I just wanted to ask Dr. Naveen, Chada, if you're on the call, if you can just share right now, what you do with the homeless. Is Dr. Naveen on this call?
Yeah, I'm on. Yeah. Thank you, Christy. So, I was asked to say about homeless people, and I was just thinking about it, and then I was just wondering whether I can add a few words about people in like a prison whom we used to visit, if time permitting. Regarding the homeless people, like it was just a casual encounter, and a person sitting in front of the church, and then I was constantly avoiding him. And then one day after the mass, Lord made me stand there and asked me to invite him for a meal. And then it was with hesitation, but I invited that person for a meal, and then he came, and then it has been 2 years. And then we knew more about him, like his mother left him in foster care for when he was around 6 months of age, and then he had 16 foster placements in his 17 years of age. But I'm grateful for that mother to have allowed him to be born, because now he is enjoying life. He has got a home now. He comes to church regularly for a blessing. He would like to be baptized. And many people whom we when we had gone for the Chosen, the Teens Leaders Program, many came, and then they sat on the street with the homeless teens and the youth leaders. And one lady was saying that there was a person who froze to death. His body temperature was 22 degrees in Sheffield, when usually, as you know, the body temperature would be around 36, 37 degrees. So yeah, there are quite a lot of deaths, and and sometimes, like, I have lost sleep, not recently, but while I was in Sheffield, but now that when it is really cold and snowing, I have gone through the streets asking, and then given some people single room in lodges or hotels through the online booking things in Sheffield or in Blackpool. And one more thing I'll say about the prisoners, I and Maria were prison visitors, like prison volunteers, used to go for a weekend, every weekend while we were in Wigan, and in adolescent prisons. And that was one of the most rewarding time we had, because the young people, one of them was an altar server, and their parents split, and then mom had another partner, and he fell off. He fell off with a partner, and then he went into drugs and ended up in prison. But he was wondering why someone else, even his mother, doesn't come to visit him in prison. Why someone totally strangers spend their time or a weekend with him, making him a cup of tea. And if we contact the prison chaplain in all the prisons, we can go there after DBS check, and they will give us the appropriate people who has got a little bit of like a small light of faith in them, and then we can speak to them how to approach the life in the light of the Word of God. Thank you, Christy.
Thank you so much, Jada. Thank you so much for sharing. Is Danya here?
Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
Danya, can you just share about befriending the elderly?
Yeah. So for me, I think I came into this concept through working in a care home. So working there, I came to realize how some of the elderly people didn't have families or relatives coming in, and some of them would go Christmases and birthdays with absolutely no one coming in to wish them or celebrate anything with them. And then through this, I started researching on UK and how the elderlies are and how the stats are about everything. And then I came across this charity called Age UK, which is a charity in UK based, looking at helping the elderly with the support, financial, everything. And then this new thing that they started recently was something called befriending. And in that, what you do is like you sign up into the website, and what you do, you kind of like adopt an elderly person. And what hearing this, I wanted to get involved. And from being in university at that time, for that was the only thing that I could do at that period of time to help someone or to be there for somebody, that someone like the care home where I was working, in fact, but these people will be people at homes. So signing up to this, I came across this beautiful lady. Then, like, I think the first time I met her, she was like explaining to me her life story, how she used to be a dancer and she used to always be active in community and everything. And then she was like telling me, oh, before coming to this program that they did called Befriending, it's been 3 months. She had a conversation with someone other than someone at the store who's serving her, other than her healthcare nurses or something. Other than that, she hasn't had a conversation with anyone for around 3 months. And when I heard that, I could not acknowledge how difficult it must have been for her just to have a simple conversation with someone. She didn't have anyone in her life to be there just to support her. And then hearing this, I just wanted to spend more and more time with her. So for 1 year that I was in my final year of uni, what I did was I used to go meet her and just do the simple things with her. So if it is just having a meal with her or just playing games with her and spending time and having a chat about how the week has been. And it was just that little step that did towards her. It meant so much to her. And it was just a simple 1 hour maybe in a week, or 1 hour in every 2 weeks or so. That's the only time I gave. But for her, that meant having someone as a family. And she even told me before I was coming back from uni, so if for me that 1 year has been a time that it was a time that she wasn't neglected, that she didn't feel like she was alone in this world, and that when she leaves this earth, it's not that that's it, no one's there to remember her kind of thing. So when she said that to me, it made me realize there's so many people, there's so many situations where the elderly community, where some people that we just not acknowledge them as people anymore. They're just somebody that's been forgotten and neglected. And I think through befriending is something that I got the opportunity to finally understand the meaning and the respect those people as having their own stories and understanding them as an individual. And yeah, so for me, it was through this beautiful charity called Age UK and befriending that I came across.
Thanks so much, Danya. I mean, when Danya shared that, I just thought like, how simple it is, but also how touching it is. Because for elderly people, I think anybody in general, it's when you just spend time with them, it's when you show them that you love them, that you care enough to put some time apart for them. And I just want to share like a really small story, just kind of touching on like an experience I had with a homeless person. When I was studying abroad in Poland, this man who was a homeless person on the street, he didn't speak much English, but he just kind of wanted some money from me. And I was just telling him, I don't have any cash on me, but we were standing outside like a coffee shop, and I said, let's go in there and I can buy you a drink. And then we got talking, and he was telling me how he just came out of prison. And then I asked him if he wanted anything to eat, because we were just talking and, let's, get lunch together. And then he, it's so genuine. He was like, this place is too expensive, but next door there's a cheaper place. I think it was KFC or something next door. So we just went next door, and then we were talking, and like, he wasn't like, when we usually go to lunch with someone, this person's well dressed and they smell nice. They, they're like decent, I guess, looking person. But I could not stand, sit next to him properly because, he probably hadn't showered in days. And I was literally like, I can't believe like I have to sit here like this. But then I have to tell you, like, that's probably like one of the most touching moments of my life, because this person, he was just like talking to me, and he was, he was also talking to everyone else around him in like such a happy way. He was like, he was talking to everybody around him, and everybody noticed us, because every time someone came to the shop, he'd talk to them. And people were looking at him a bit weird. They were looking at both of us sitting together, a bit weird. But then he was just such a happy person, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like I could never be like that. And look at how happy he is, even though he has nothing. And after a while of talking, he started crying in front of me, and he said, and that was so uncomfortable for me as well, because I've never had someone that age, just kind of a grown-up man crying in front of me like that. And he was crying, and I said, why are you crying? He said he's crying because he's happy, because I took the time to look into his eyes and to spend that time with him, and that meant so much to him, because there's been like so many days that he'll just sit on the street and people walk past, not paying him any attention, but also maybe kind of say bad things, call him names and be horrible to him. And so for him, it meant so much that I did that. And then at that point, I was thinking, oh my gosh, like, who am I to judge him for what he looks like, or, what he smells like, or whatever. Like, this is Jesus, like, sitting in front of me, This is God incarnate, and Jesus is in each one of us. He's in everybody around us. And, that time that I spent with him was some time that I spent with Jesus. And in the same way, what Danya was saying, what Navijan was saying, it's those people's lives have value and worth, and they may not even realize it until somebody like that cares about them sits with them, in that time of despair that they're going through. So some practical steps, some things we can do, like Danya mentioned, Age UK's Befriending the Elderly program, getting involved in something like that. I'm just trying to go next. My battery stopped. Should I, like, someone controlling the screen? No, okay. It's fine now. I can just see some drawings on the screen. I'm not sure where they came from. But, so yeah. So befriending the elderly with Age UK, helping out in homeless shelters. And in terms of, like, pro-life stuff, we can attend March for Life. The date for that I've put on here. In 2020, the March for Life is on the 13th of June, Saturday the 13th of June. Please do save the date. Please do, make sure you're there. It's amazing when you're standing up for something that is so right. In the middle of London, last year, a few of us went, it's like a true witness to life, a few of us gathering together like that. So please do try and go this year. We want more participation from JY this year. Last year there was a good group of us, but we want a bigger group to go this year. So Saturday the 13th of June, taking part in 40 Days for Life. I'm sure most of us have heard of this. But 40 Days for Life is this campaign where in the 40 days before Easter, around the world, in different countries, people will stand peacefully and prayerfully in front of abortion clinics and just pray the rosary. I've had a chance to do this when I was in Birmingham. And once or twice, people have shouted horrible things. People driving past the abortion clinic will shout things at you. But apart from that, you're doing the right thing. Because when we're being persecuted, for our faith, we know that's when we're doing the right thing, right? So this, I just want to share a little miracle story too. This group of people, like in 40 Days of Our Life people, who've been praying in front of UK's oldest abortion clinic in Edgbaston. Again, had been praying there for years and years and years. The leader from that, Isabel, recently wrote, and she said that abortion clinic closed down because of the prayers, basically. So they'd cut down their days to be closed on Saturdays and Wednesdays and Sundays. Now they've closed the whole thing down. And there are so many abortion clinics like this that are closing because of prayer. So please do try and take part in this, especially during this Lent if you can. If you just type in 40 Days for Life, you can look at people in your area and who to contact for this. But it's really rewarding, and it's really something that I think all of us, it's an easy thing to do, something that all of us can do. Okay, and CAFOD campaigns as well. So things that we can take part in. I just want to just use the next 5 minutes just to open the floor to everyone to maybe if people have other things that they want to share. For example, if there's another charity that we can get involved with, please do tell us so the rest of us can get involved in that as well. If anybody has anything to share, please do that now.
Please unmute yourself if you're going to speak, if anyone wants to share anything.
Okay, if you don't have anything to share, that's fine as well. But at least 3 things that we can take away from this and we can try and practice. One of them obviously is to pray for all of these things that we talked about. The people who are lonely in this country, for those refugees and asylum seekers, for the homeless, for babies in the womb, and also for euthanasia never to be allowed in the UK. That's something that I think we do need to pray for. During the 2015 Alive conference, we signed little postcards and sent it off to our MPs, and we kind of said we don't want euthanasia, and they didn't allow it at that time. But it doesn't mean that it's not going to come back. So we need to pray that there be a good culture of life in this country. Honestly, prayer is one thing, and we also have to be actively involved. We have to be out there with the poor, to see Jesus in the faces of the poor, and to be involved in all of these campaigns, and as we can. And also, I think in our families too. So the children realize, I think, the importance of doing things like this. I think one of the things that maybe Dr. Naveen didn't mention, but I've heard, is that Dr. Naveen's daughter, Marianne, knows the homeless people by name. And so anytime they go out to the city center, she'll stop and speak to them. That's such a cute thing for her to do. And it really, I'm sure, really touches the people that she speaks to as well. So to raise that culture of life in our families as well. So I hope, I've been feeling convicted for the past week, really, to do something more, with in person with the poor. So I hope, all of us feel challenged in the same way to practice our faith in this way. So yeah, that's all I had to say. And the sources for everything that I've got in the presentation. Most of the stuff on abortion is from Bishop Barron, and if you just type in Bishop Barron and abortion on YouTube, we'll bring up all these videos, and then everything else is from various news sources. So are there any questions in the last minute or so? If not, we'll wind up, Chera.
Yeah, we'll give you some, if you're okay, Christy, we'll open it up for questions if anyone has any questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you have any questions, you can, as I said earlier, you can put that in the chat window. You can send it to me or Christy, or you can unmute yourself and ask a question. Okay, so Christy, while people are thinking, a couple of questions that came through. That one was about, I think you mentioned it, but it was more about how can you practice dignity of life in your families, and especially how can parents practice it towards their kids, in terms of maintaining that dignity in life.
Yes, Jada?
Did you get that question?
So were you asking, like, how can we practice it in our families?
Yes, yeah. And especially how can parents practice it towards the kids?
Or towards the kids?
Yeah.
Or with the kids?
Towards the kids, yeah.
Towards the kids. Oh, that's an interesting one. So I was thinking one thing that I thought about, which was, like a simple thought that came to my mind when I was preparing for this, but I didn't put it in the presentation. I was just thinking, like dignity, right? Everybody has a dignity. And I was thinking, in the way that we treat people in our like words as well, that's something that we can, practice dignity, practice, I guess, dignity of life in. So like treating people with that respect. And towards parents and children, I'm kind of, I don't know if I'm able to answer that question. I don't have children. If any of the families want to take that question, I'll be more than.
No, I agree with what you said. I think it's more about, respecting each other, choosing your words wisely, and, respecting life and respecting the person as he or she is.
Yeah, and I think one thing I'd add is sometimes I think in our culture, maybe it's kind of accepted to talk about people in a way that makes them feel very little. So I think sometimes with parents and children, it might be like, you're comparing your child to someone else and then saying, oh, look how good they're doing. But I know, like, growing up, my parents didn't really do that. But I know my friends whose parents did that and how little the children then felt, like my friends, how little they felt. And also I think another thing is like commenting, this might be a bit, people might agree with this or not, but I think sometimes commenting on the way people look as well, I think that's kind of insulting their dignity of life, because God has created people in different ways and we should accept people as they are, whether they're short or tall, or whether they're skinny or whether they're slightly larger, or if they have big ears, big nose. It doesn't matter. I feel like we shouldn't comment on that, but everybody should be made to feel beautiful as they are. I'd say that's one thing. I mean, might not just be with parents and children, but in general, I think that's something we can practice too.
Yeah. There was another thing about, how do you practice this in schools? Especially, I think it revolves around bullying, and how can you practice dignity of life in school?
I think one thing, I'm glad you mentioned this actually, because I was thinking one thing we can do to bring this culture into our parishes and schools is to maybe kind of give talks in our schools and parishes, as simple as that. So like on a Sunday, maybe it's like Sunday of Life or something like that. Like we can ask the parish priest if we can just address the congregation, talk to them about the different ways in which we can support life, and dignity of life, and to raise awareness of that. And I think the same thing in schools as well. As Jesuits, we have that mandate from heaven really to like evangelize and to kind of make it our mission to raise awareness of this dignity of life, right? So that's something that we can do as part of our evangelization in schools as well, in Catholic and non-Catholic schools. I'm sure there's a lot that we can do in terms of raising that awareness. And in terms of bullying, I think like in school, that's something a lot of kids go through. And I don't have any answers to that as such. I can't say what can we do to stop that. But I think if someone's being bullied, one thing we can do is to support them and to make them feel that they're loved and really valued. There was a video that I saw recently of a little a 9-year-old boy. Many people might have seen this video. He has dwarfism, and his mom took a video of him just crying. It's such a sad video, and he's crying. He's saying he wants to kill himself because people keep bullying him in school. But then and his mom's also crying, taking this video, and she's just posted it on the internet, asking why people like this, why people so mean, why people so horrible. And from that, like, a lot of people around the world supported him, and like, they were able to reach out to him, make him feel loved. So I think if someone is affected through bullying or something like that, what we can do is to affirm their dignity and make them realize that they're loved and their life has value and worth.
Thank you. Thank you, Christy. Yeah, thanks a lot. Does anyone have any other questions? Otherwise, we will wind up. I think it's we gone about 5 minutes.
Christy, I was wondering, like, when I speak to children in year 10 and year 11, 12 about abortion, one constant question I get from many people is that, yeah, so what happens if one is raped? And then I give them an answer, but it has not been very convincing. Can you help me how to answer that question?
And Chada, I think one thing is, like, so I also, when I was, I went to Catholic school, and I think in year 10, we were taught about this, pro-life issues. But the way the teacher teaches and the attitude of the people in the class also have an effect on how I view this topic. And I also thought, okay, what if a woman's raped? But then as I got older, like, I realized that, like, it's not a child's fault if its father is a rapist, right? Like, we cannot make the child pay for the crimes of his father. So in that scenario, there's two victims. The mother's already a victim because she's been raped, right? I mean, I don't know if it's right to use the word victim, but she's been raped, and that's so traumatizing for her. So, and then to create another victim from that by aborting that child, and I feel like that's complete injustice. And what has that child done to deserve that? And there are so many women who choose to give birth to that child and then to put that child up for adoption, because sometimes what people say is, okay, how can the mother look at that child and she might see the face of the rapist in that child? But then some women, as an answer to that, they put their child that they conceived through rape up for adoption, and they've gone on to have a good life from that. And there's been, like, so many videos that I've seen of reunions between parents and children, and the children are so happy that the parents chose life. Okay, Steve Jobs, in one of the slides I showed earlier, he said he met his birth mom, and he just wanted to thank her for choosing life, for giving him a chance to live. And we're not anybody to take anyone's life away, and everybody deserves life. That is the most fundamental human right.
Thank you, Christy.
Thank you, Christy. Thank you, Naveen. Any more questions? Anyone? Okay.
There was a question on the chat by Sean.
Oh yeah, sorry. Okay. Sorry, I missed that. So Christy, I'm not sure whether you can see the chat. I'll just read it out for you. Can you see the chat? Are there opportunities for us to go visit people in care homes other than what Dania said about befriending? Would we need to have extra DBS checks to do this?
Dania, are you still on the call?
Dania, yeah, she's on the call. Dania, I've just unmuted you. So if you want to answer, do you want to take that question? Yeah.
I don't know exactly, but for me, when I worked in a care home, they did request us to have a DBS in order to make sure if they're vulnerable elderly, then yes, we would have to have DBS. And especially if you're visiting in a care home for a frequent visit, then usually, but if you're going as a community, normally, then it's fine. But if it's one-to-one, I think, yeah, not entirely sure, but because I used to work in a care home, it was okay for me.
I think through the parishes also we can do some visits. If we are a Eucharistic minister, we can take Eucharist to elderly people who are housebound, who don't have pretty much anyone to talk to. That's so.
Praju, we can't hear you. Praju, you are breaking up.
Oh, sorry. No. I was saying, through parishes, we can do this kind of charity work by by being a Eucharistic minister. We can take Eucharist to elderly people who are housebound and all. In that way, we can, they're pretty much, lonely. There's so many people out there, and we can do that. I was doing that, for a few years. So that's a good way to kind of, talk to elderly people who are housebound. With the care homes, there will be, if you are, they believe that we should have this, like Dennis said, we should have this DBS. But if you have a friend or anyone, if we got anyone who works in the care home, I think we can kind of visit by using that support. I don't know.
I think just to add on to what Chen was saying, SVPs in parishes also do things like this. So St. Vincent de Paul Society, they will pay for your DBS as well. If you want to volunteer with them, you can take a commitment to go see an elderly person. And people who need some kind of company, they work with Age UK to do that, to do what Daniel is doing. But then you go with someone else because you're not allowed to go with just one person. So the SVP in parishes, they'll actually pay for your DBS to do that as well.
Yeah, I just want to add that what we did was, from Jesus Youth around here, few families, we have done this for a couple of years now. During Christmas, we used to go to nursing homes and do carols. So we have done that. So unless you're meeting someone, face to face, in a personal one-to-one, you don't need a DBS, because we went as a group and it was through the nursing home manager. Everything was organized in such a way that we are in the hall singing and pray, giving the Christmas message. So there is opportunities like that as well, so where you can use it and visiting nursing homes. So we've done it a few times and it was really good.
Yeah. And you took the kids with you, right, Cheta? So that was an experience for them as well.
Yeah. It was for the whole family. Yeah, it was for kids and elders. There's a question. There's a question from Wilma, which is which you can't see, just came to me. How do we convey the message of dignity of life for those who are back from prison or has been in prison for years? Does anyone have any experience on this? Did you get the question?
Yes, Jada. I don't have much experience with prison ministry. The only time I've done anything is when, for Christmas, this one time, we went with a group of people and we sang carols for the people in the prison because their families were visiting them. So some of the, so the moms brought the kids. This was a men's prison. The moms brought the kids, and the kids thought they were going to go visit daddy at work because the kids are not old enough to realize that their dad's in prison, But then all these kids and their moms came and just spent time like that with their dads. And it was just so touching for me because sometimes we don't think about the humanity of people in prison. We just think they're bad people and they deserve it. I'd love to know the answer to what Wilma was asking as well, because I've not really ever come across anybody that does that particular type of ministry, like when people come out of prison.
I don't know how, when they come out of the prison, but when we visit them in the prison and just spending some time with them makes them valued. Like if you ask them, how was your week, and then they start opening up, and then and anything else, slowly they open up, and then when we offer them make them a cup of tea, they feel valued. They will be thinking, why is he doing that? So I feel valued. And when we visit them for a Christmas, like when Maria, and Maria was pregnant with Marianne at that time, and then Maria's parents were there. All of us went to the prison, and this boy, he gave us a handwritten Christmas card, and it was, I think, Psalms 91. And a Christmas card, and he told that, yes, I feel very valued because this Christmas you found time to spend time with me. So when we go out, and then a smile, a chat, that will make them valued, like for people in prison.
Yeah, thanks, Naveen. Any more questions, anyone? Okay. So, Christy, thanks a lot.
One more thing, Chada, I just wanted to say, if there's a lot of people interested in prison ministry, there is somebody in Birmingham who he's the one that organized the visit that I went on, and he's always looking for more people to help with like prison ministry and other things that he does like that. So social justice, basically. Loads of people are interested in that. What we can do is, as a group, we can get in touch with him and ask him what we can do. But if you're interested, please do let BD Chatter know, or just contact any of us. And then if there's a good group of people, or even one or two people, we can still put you in touch with him, James Truby, and I'm sure he'd be happy to help with that.
Yeah, and one more thing to add is that if you just Google your nearby prisons, and then there will be prison chaplains. So I went through the prison chaplain, and there will be a contact number and email ID. If you email or ring the prison chaplain, the Catholic prison chaplain, and as Anne was saying, that they are more than welcome, because they are short of volunteers, and once we have they will do the DBS check and everything for us. And so if you Google, you can find more people around your place.
Thanks. Thank you, Naveen.
Thank you, Dr. Naveen.
Okay, so I think we will wind up. So Christy, thanks a lot again. Thanks for your time. And all the way from Texas, thanks a lot. I think it was quite good in the way that the session was covered, because when we initially think of dignity of life, it's what comes into our life, especially from a GC youth context. We might think about abortion or pro-life. So it was good that the whole thing covered from homelessness, loneliness, war, elderly people, the whole thing. So it was quite informative, and it also told us about what we can do. And I think what I gathered, one of the points that I wrote down, was to pray for them, to practice it, and then of course to preach it to others and tell them how they can practice it in their life. So thanks a lot for your time and for all the preparation that you put into this one. Hope to hear more from you in the future. I'm sure we'll have more webinars from you. Before we wind up, can I invite Mary to say a short prayer? And before we wind up, please.
Father in heaven, I thank you for today's webinar, Lord. I thank for Christy to bring her within us and to let us know what is dignity of life, and to make us understand there are so many other ways when we can feed the hungry and give water to thirsty people, and to go to the prison, Lord. That was a very different enlightenment which we got, many of us must have got today. Father, we thank you for her precious time, what she gave it to all of us, Lord. And thank you for each one of us, Lord, to help us to come together tonight, to be together, Lord, and being with us during these times. Lord, we especially pray for each one of us, Lord. Enlighten our mind, and fill us with the Spirit to maintain the dignity of life. Lord, the practical tips, whatever was given today, Lord, help us to practice in our life, Lord. And we especially pray for our families, so that this can be carried to our generation. Whatever you have taught us to take care of your people, Lord. We thank you once again for Christy to bring her with us, and for her family, Lord, for her new family life, Lord. We are giving everyone into your hands once again, and we say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Give us this day our daily bread.
This day on daily bread, forgive us our trespasses, as we
Just
forgive
trespass
the
against us.
trespasses against us.
Lead
Lead
us
us
not
not
into
into
temptation.
temptation, deliver us from evil.
Mother Mary, we are giving Christy into your hands and family into your hands, and we say, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary,
Holy Mary, Mother of
Son of
God,
God,
pray
pray
for
for
us
us
sinners,
sinners, now and
now
at the
and
hour
at the
of
hour
our
of
death.
our death.
Amen.
Amen.
Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit.
as it
As
was
it
in
As
the
it
was
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 in
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 the
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 beginning,
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 is
now
now
is
and
now,
now,
ever
and
shall
ever
be.
shall
shall
be,
be,
world without end.
without
Amen.
end. Amen.
Okay, thank you everyone, and also thank you to Naveen and Dania for sharing your experiences. Okay, thank you, Christy.
Thank you,
Give
Christy.
your regards
Thank
to
you.
Alvin.
Thank you.
Your
Thank
regards
you.
to Alvin.
Thank you.
Hi to him. Okay, thank you all. Bye.
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 Okay.
Okay, God bless. Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.